Okay, guys, it is just me and you. You can confess to me. Go ahead and confess. Who is it that you want to hurt? Now, don't confess it out loud. If you confess it out loud, might be somebody close enough they can actually hear you stating these things. So confess it in your mind. Who is it that you want to hurt? Or who is it that you are hurting? Most likely you're not physically hurting them, but you probably are by your words trying to hurt them, either directly aimed straight at them or in some kind of backdoor fashion, or maybe on the interior of your being, you're trying to hurt them. But I got a passage of scripture for you that should really highlight how we should focus upon this. In John chapter 8, you've got the woman that was caught in the midst of adultery. And the most religious people around grabbed this woman and dragged her to Jesus and were like, should we stone this woman? Should we kill her for her sins? I mean, she has been caught in the act of adultery. Jesus stoops down and writes on the ground. And then his overall response is, let him who is without sin cast the first stone. Now, these guys that were the most religious, and I think this probably includes, you and I, because only religious people watch videos like this. So the most religious, Jesus is pulling into this sphere here, and he's showing that the most religious people wanted to hurt and condemn someone. And he was like, let whoever amongst you religious people, who is the most religious, who doesn't have any sin, let that person cast the first stone. You see, this brings to light something for us, that these religious people, just like you and I, still wanted to hurt others. Their deepest heart was not to help people, but to hurt people. Now, if you're a pretty good religious person, there are times that you help people, but I bet if you ponder your heart and do some self-examination, there are still those you want to hurt some of the time. Well, Jesus is bringing this to light, and what we find here is that these religious leaders were actually even wanting to hurt God. They wanted to hurt Jesus. They wanted to bring him down and capture him by this situation so they could hurt him. You see, it's in our human nature to want to hurt other people. And Jesus simply brought this out by saying, let he who doesn't have any sin cast the first stone. If you really want to cast the stone, if you really want to hurt another human being, then just show me how there's no sin in your life, and you can have this rock right here. Now, any of us that actually stop to examine will find that we do have sin in our life. You see, the man that was standing there sinless was Jesus Christ, and he had no sin, and he didn't want to hurt anybody. But those that were not examining themselves, when they failed to look on the inside because they weren't looking into the dark recesses of the heart, didn't realize how their sins were making them want to hurt other human beings. So here's a fantastic example of how Jesus is trying to get us to self-examine. He's like, listen, if you really want to hurt people, then examine your own life. Find out and get rid of all the sin, and then you can lead the condemnation crusade. But until you can do that, I reserve the right to condemn. And then we find out that Jesus' grace was freely flowing to this woman. He said, where are your condemners? And she's like, they all left. And he goes, well, I don't condemn you either, because I came here to help people. You see, I am sinless. And that being the case, I don't care to hurt people. That's not one of my priorities in life. If we will examine ourselves, we will find that we do, in fact, want to hurt people. And this is because of the sins that are in our life. So let us examine these sins and begin to remove these sins so that we can better ask the question, how can I help those around me?